Kia ora tātou, welcome back to the Wargaming Den. Tonight's game is the sixth game of O Group I have for you, but it's also, I think, about the seventh game in my Battles for Monte Casino campaign that I started last year. So I wanted to try the next game using O Group, and the game is themed around the Texan 36 Division's crossing of the Rapido in January 1944. So just a little bit of background. The Allies had reached the Gustav line in January. As you can see from the map, the Monte Cassino is up here. So the attacks on the Rapido were trying to cross the river and bypass the casino position. The British had attacked further south, and I did those battles last year, but it was a bit of a major disaster, this crossing, and there were lots of investigations as to what went wrong at the end of the war, because it was an absolute bloodbath, and it probably didn't even need to be fought, to be fair. Lots of generals were not wanting to go ahead with it, but I think Mark Clark ordered it. The Allies were about to land at Anzio, and it was probably hoped to be a bit of a diversion in that regard as well. However, the Germans on the western side of the river, they held all the high ground, so they were overlooking the river crossings, etc. It was a night attack. It was a bit of a disastrous night attack, as it turned out, but two regiments of the 36th Texas Division attempted to cross in a variety of assault boats and things and establish a beachhead on the northern side, the western side. But yeah, as I said, it didn't quite work out. So tonight's battle is trying to replicate that, and I've come up with some scenario rules and stuff to try and replay it in O Group. Now I'm going to be running the Americans. We're playing in 15mm. I've got a battalion with 3 rifle companies. I've taken 3 bazookas to attach one to each of the companies. A medium machine gun platoon of 2 medium machine guns, a 60mm mortar platoon of 3, and I've got 2 tank destroyers, 2 Shermans, and an assault gun platoon of 2 Scots. Now, there was no way to get armor across the river, so the American armor cannot cross the river. They're only there to offer fire support. And the attack is going to be taking place at night, so I had to end up making up some night rules, which seem to have worked out. If we look at the defenders, we used an infantry battalion, but you could use a Panzer Grenadier battalion, because after all, they were actually Panzer Grenadiers defending this section of the front. It was actually elements of the 15th Panzer Grenadier Division. The 15th had been destroyed in the desert in Tunisia, if I remember correctly, and had been rebuilt with a few core troops and new troops added, but they fought very well in Italy. So we've just got a war. We decided to go with a Warn battalion, so only 2 companies. So the Germans are actually quite limited. They've got the initial defending force is only 12 points, but Keith, my opponent, decided to max out and go for 4 medium machine gun sections. So that's a lot of firepower. No, not much in the way of anti-tank, but a lot of firepower. We also gave the defenders 2 trenches and gun pits if they wanted them, and also 2 hasty minefields. Now, in the actual battle, the far bank of the river was heavily mined. There was barbed wire. There's all kinds of obstacles, but we're still trying to figure out the balance of O Group, and we haven't really played any games with a great deal of fortifications up till now. And the other thing we have given the Germans is a Panzer IV platoon. So when dawn arrives on the game, which is originally was going to be turn 10, but we brought it forward to from turn 6 onwards, a Panzer IV platoon can deploy in San Angelo. So that really gives the Germans, probably overall, if you include the points for the minefields and that, about 22, 23 points versus the 29 points of the Americans. So overall, pretty close points wise. And yeah, as I said, I came up with special rules, and we'll have a look at the table and have a look at some of those special rules in a second. Okay, so this is a photo of the battlefield from last night. What you can't really see very well is actually the high ground runs along here and up around here. So the Germans command the high ground. The Americans can deploy on, technically it was the east bank of the river, but I'm going to call it the south bank just because I'm looking north and south. And I haven't got any assault boats or anything like that in 15 mil. So what we did is the Americans deploy on this side of the river, but and they could only move 2d6 infantry and take the highest dice roll. All combat patrols also had to start on this side of the river. They could only be deployed from the far side of the river once the company HQs were across the river themselves. And that was just to kind of represent the actual crossings themselves. So then we have no man's land, and then approximately where this line is about where the 24-inch mark is, where the German forward defense line is. Now in the game last night, we actually gave these two farmlets 4 points towards, so the equivalent of a foo bar towards the break, but on reflection after the game, we decided it was probably just a wee bit high. So in future, we're just going to probably have objectives like these are going to be worth 2 points for the attacker or whoever captures them. And same San Angelo, though, both of the two buildings up here to represent the settlement of San Angelo were going to be worth 4 points, but in future we'll actually make them worth 3 points. So that is the table. As I said, it's a night attack, and so ranges were limited. I think we limited them to 20 inches, and that's purely so that tanks could actually fire and get to about halfway. But any units that fired at night, everything that counted was obscured, but if a unit fired at night, then the other player could shoot back at that unit with other units in their turn, kind of to represent them, giving away their general position. And the night rules we came up with seemed to work for the scenario and didn't need to have too much in the way of tweaking. Okay, so as is the case in O Group, not a hell of a lot on table actually. I've just put my infantry platoons along the edge here just so that they're easier to deploy. I've got my artillery batteries, my battalion HQ and my mortars just sitting there because they look better on table. I've got my HQ scattered along here, and I have my combat patrols when we rolled for which units deploy on table. Here it looks like there's a German company commander or maybe an observer, another team there, and ended up in ambush in here. I think Keith ended up with 3 ambushes overall, and he also had some dug in medium machine guns in ambush as well. But as usual, the battlefield looks very empty at the start of a game of O Group, and that is one of the things I really like about it. It's only through use of combat patrols that you really start to pin down where the enemy is, and I like the way that unfolds throughout the battle. And indeed, here is the dice rolls for the deployment. So Keith had 1-1, which doesn't count for anything because we're not having interdiction because that was a warm battalion. Those 3 dice there means that he's got 3 ambushes and he's got 5 combat patrols. I, as the attacker, get 4 units can deploy on table, and I get 3 combat patrols, and 2 ones didn't count as any interdiction on the enemy because, yeah, as we said, that was a warm battalion with no reserves. So not a bad start for the initial battalion deployments. Not a great deal of action from the Americans on turn 1. All I did was start crossing the river with my company HQs and my observer teams. I only actually deployed in a very small area. This is where my company, this wall here was going to be my company boundary. So I've got one company on that side, one on the other. The field here was going to be my forming up point for my reserve company. I thought I'm going to grab this objective on the far left flank if I can, then consolidate and then try and push towards the village after that. The only thing I have put on is my platoon of Shermans have come forward to offer some fire support if needed. Otherwise, there was absolutely no shooting in that turn. And in response, Keith was quite aggressive, pushing forward combat patrols here, another one forward here. He also ambushed with this platoon here, and he may have killed one of my combat teams. There's another combat team push forward there. Not sure who that is back there in the tree line, but I think that's a forward observer team there. So Keith is being quite aggressive with his defense, trying to shoot off a few combat patrols if he can, but otherwise not a great deal of action. Not a good start for turn 2. As you can see, we both ended up getting one hesitant company. I got one battalion order, Keith's got one as well, and we both got 5 regular orders. So yeah, not the best start. I don't think we've ever had a game where we've both managed to have hesitant companies early on. Not ideal. Turn 2, both of us had a hesitant company. The Germans took the initiative. They're trying, look at this little fellow here, trying to hunt down my poor little observer. The platoon over there fired at him twice and he survived. That company over there was hesitant. I advanced over here, tried to shoot at this poor little combat patrol, which unleashed hell with an ambush of heavy machine guns from the tree line that shocked me. He got 12 hits. How rude. And I took 4 hits, so shocked, but he didn't kill the stand. And he's also closing in on my company commander over here. So on to turn 3. The Americans are across the Rapido. All is going swimmingly, except when it's not. Slightly better this turn. I get 2 battalion orders, 5 regular orders, 2 non-orders. Keith got 3 battalion orders and 6 regular orders, so can't be too worried about that at all. Nothing dodgy about our dice rolling at all. Now, I think this might have been my Shermans getting 8 hits on the machine guns, and then the machine guns saving 2, 4, 6. Hey, oh no, so 7 hits. I got 7 hits on the machine guns, and Keith saved 6 of them and only failed 1. Are our dice loaded? One would potentially think so, looking at this dice rolling. Turn 3. The Germans got the initiative. I rolled a 3. Keith rolled a 9 or 11 for the initiative. These guys let rip repeatedly all over the place, trying to shoot combat patrols and anyone else looking American. There was a brief smoke bombardment here, but only in the German turn, and they put it down, so we were quite happy with that. I deployed off a couple of combat patrols up here and I'm making a bit of an advance here, but these sneaky Germans are trying to kill my observer. It's very unsporting of those guys right there. But yeah, looking interesting. Moving on to turn 4. But we are across the river, kind of. Okay, and just a bit of a shot down the table. So as you can see here, that's those infantry trying to hunt down my forward observer. That's the other infantry. Lots of orders have been had, so he could fire quite a lot. But as you can see, my advance is really just trying to concentrate down here. The important objectives are actually over here, but my thoughts were if I can capture here, get 4 fubars, and then deploy my reserve company from here, then I could potentially advance through here, grab that second objective. If I can grab that, hopefully I've done enough damage to have defeated the Germans without actually having to go in a direct assault against San Angelo. I was really worried about the amount of defences that were going to be up there. It seems to be working. I've got across the river. I'm making some headway. Let's have a look at the next turn. Orders for turn 4. I got 6 battalion orders, 2 ones which count as no orders, and 3 company orders. Keith, on the other hand, only got 1 battalion order and 6 regular orders, also missed out on 2. Now, I think we've said it before, but battalion orders, you can have a maximum of 6 of them, and you roll 2 dice and add your number of battalion orders to see who gets initiative for the turn. So by getting 6 this turn, gives me a bit of an advantage when it comes to rolling for initiative. End of turn 4. More carnage has ensued. The Germans got the initiative again. Another 2 machine guns. Who brings medium machine guns to an infantry fight? That's what I want to know. They came out, they decimated a platoon over here. I lost, and that had attached bazooka, so that brought me to 5 dice in my first fubar, and then my Shermans, etc., have fired and cleared out the machine gun, and I consolidated this field is actually where my 3rd company consolidation point is, to jump off and roll these Germans up like a blanket. Yeah, right. Bit of a disastrous turn in some ways. The Americans have now lost 5 units towards the break point of 12, and the Germans have lost 2. Okay, good orders turn for the Americans. I got 5 regular orders and 3 battalion orders. The Germans got 7 regular orders, no battalion orders, and 2 non-orders. And there's that platoon that is up hunting for my forward observer, the little sneaks. In position. Turn 5 was brutal. At the end of it, these guys fired at my observer, and the Scots let rip and killed a base. I took out the machine guns. I suppressed them and then killed the last one. I also opened up with my machine gun, but I got suppressed because before I killed his machine gun, he returned the favour, fully suppressed me, and then later on I lost another stand to an artillery barrage that hit around this area around here. Whoops. And there was also a last ambush in there. So I did capture this building, which gave me another FUBAR. That's a 1 FUBAR objective. That's another 1 FUBAR objective, and the big town is worth 2. So we are on to turn 6, and things are looking pretty good for the Americans, I think, at this point. Okay, orders dice for turn 6. 2 non-orders. I got 1 battalion order, 5 regular orders, and Keith got a battalion order. 4 regulars, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 non-order. I can't remember who got the initiative. We will find out shortly. Originally, we were going to wait till turn 10 for daylight to start rolling for daylight, but it didn't look like the game was going to last that long after turn 5. So we rolled on turn 6. Keith rolled a 4+, and so daylight arrived, which meant that his Panzer IV platoon appeared in the village of San Angelo, ready to do battle with the dastardly Americans. And suddenly things are looking very, very close. Break point for both armies is 12 destroyed units. So currently Keith's on 11 and I'm on 10, and I can't quite remember how we got there. Part of the 11 was 4 of those 11 were the casualties equivalents caused by me capturing that farm building. I took some serious hits from the medium machine guns, and also there was a very successful artillery strike that hit 3 of my platoons and killed 3 or 4 stands, if I remember correctly. So things are really in the balance. Going from here, I'm down to maybe 1 order, and if I can kill that last stand, I will win. But if not, then the game is likely to swing the other way to Keith.
End of turn 6. Keith was on 11, I was on 10. I had 1 company order. My M10s rolled on. Keith rolled 4 failed saves, and I killed a base and stole victory. But man, that was close. What an awesome game.
That really was crazy, that last couple of turns. The Germans' artillery, big strike in here, killed maybe 4 or 5 stands over 3 platoons. Memo to self, don't bunch up where the German artillery can rain down on you. The last turn here, these 2 Panzer IVs, they actually hit the Scots, which are here, but they didn't spot them. So they managed to just put 2 shock onto each of them. If both of those dice rolls have been 4 pluses to spot, I would have been spotted. Those 2 Scots would have been destroyed, and Keith would have won the game quite comfortably. So yeah, it just kind of just went crazy on turn 5 and 6, and became a real slugfest. And it was literally my last order. I'd run out of battalion orders. It was the last order to bring on my M10s to try and finish the last stand that I needed to get the to kill one of them and take the victory. Because if I'd missed, or if he'd saved, we would have rolled on to turn 7. I had no battalion orders left. I might have got 1 or 2. Most likely initiative was going to go to Keith, and he just needed to kill 1 or 2 stands himself. So it was very, very close. But let's have a look at what happened in the actual battle. It was a bit of a major disaster, actually. Crossing at night, the troops, and the river was in flood as well. It was the middle of winter. The weather was absolute crap. I think that was the coldest winter of the 20th century up to that point, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong on that. But yeah, the weather was miserable. The Americans did get across. Both regiments got troops across, but not in any depth. And in the morning, the Germans were on the high ground, and the Americans were well and truly in trouble. And rather than calling off the attack, I think it might have been Clark ordered a renewed attack for later in the afternoon, which was absolutely crazy. The Germans had all the high ground. They had artillery, they had observers. It would have been a real massacre. They went across instead, again at night, under the cover of darkness, got some footbridges established. These were destroyed the next morning, and the Americans were forced to withdraw, and they took very, very heavy losses. I think the losses on the Rapido were heavier than on Omaha Beach, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong on that, but it was an unmitigated disaster, and it really was a divisional level attack that probably needed to be an army attack, with the British attacking at the same time to stretch the Germans, or better yet, didn't really need to be done at all. The British attack further to the south had already come unstuck, and the British had called off their attacks and had recommended that the Americans did the same. But unfortunately for lots of men and their families, the Americans went ahead with the attack, and it became a real tragedy on the Rapido. However, what it has done is actually set us up for the next battle in this little mini campaign I've slowly been fighting, in that we can now play the German counterattack to try and get the Americans back across the river. The rules I came up with, I was happy with. We did make a couple of tweaks and change the forces a bit, reduce the number of points at the end of the game, and I'll write that up as a proper scenario before too much longer. But overall, really happy with the way it went. It couldn't have got much closer. 11-10 becoming 12-10 when it came to units destroyed to break one of the companies. So yeah, lots of fun. Look forward to the next battle report soon. Thank you for watching, and until next time, as always, ka kite anō. Take care. Have a good evening or day or week, whatever it is where you are. And yeah, leave any comments down below finally if you feel so inclined. But until next time, see you later.